This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz in Sacramento today, and we are joined by Kristin Olsen. She is the GOP leader in the California State Assembly. I congratulate you. A budget was passed. Whether there were Republican votes irrelevant, a budget was passed. But what was most interesting is the Republican voice on the budget, which was not all negative.
No, it wasn't all negative.
Yes.
You know, there are many things to compliment about the budget. We applaud Governor Brown for agreeing with us that we have to hold the line on realistic revenue projections. Right. And so he cut $2.5 billion out of the legislative Democrats' proposal. That's great. The other great thing about the budget is it truly prioritizes education. That's something I've been calling for the entire time I've served in the state assembly. It diverts about $100 million away from the classroom, and I was not happy about that. But on the whole, it really makes education a priority in California again. That's great.
I want to ask you about education, if I may. There is no doubt that Californians, left, right, and center, prioritize education. They did with Prop 98, they did with Prop 30. The challenge becomes California has so prioritized education that so much of the fund goes to K-12, K-14. And we have this extra revenue, and it's all getting diverted to education, which is nice, it's important. But I'm just wondering if it's time that we look for a broader definition of Prop 98 so that maybe we can put money into other programs.
Well, and that's exactly where we believe this year's budget begins to fail. While it does prioritize education, and that's a good thing that we applaud and we stand for, it doesn't move beyond that into other priorities. There are no greater priorities this year in California than education, water, and transportation. And the budget largely ignores the priorities when it comes to water and transportation.
And let's take those separately.
Yeah.
Let's talk about water. Leader, it's a scary time right now. I mean, honestly, I have two daughters. We have daughters the same age, and they're spooked. They're spooked. I know we shouldn't frown at Brown, but it's scary.
It is.
And I'm just wondering if California is reacting quickly enough with projects that will help us today.
I would say we're absolutely not reacting quickly enough. We're in a crisis in this state when it comes to lack of water supply, unlike we have ever seen before. It is time that we move projects that will increase water supply out of bureaucracy and into construction. In the meantime, our economy is suffering. We have families that don't even have water to take showers in. I mean, some communities are literally having communal showers because there's no water. It is a tragedy, and it's up to us as leaders to do something about that, and the budget should reflect that as a priority.
I want to talk about two elements of the water debate. The first being water rights. I recently read a quote of yours in the Los Angeles Times. As you know, for the first time since the 1970s, folks with very senior water rights, we're talking 1903 water rights, were told they needed to stop pulling water out of various watersheds. We're all in this together, but what's your sense of that?
You know, it is a statewide problem. It requires statewide solutions. But I will tell you, as I talk to folks, people are fed up, and I count myself as one of them, that we have the State Water Board and water agencies that are looking at, well, that have now curtailed junior and senior water rights, imposing $10,000 fines saying we have to conserve more and more and more. All the conservation and curtailments in the world are not going to solve this water crisis. We have to start focusing on projects that will increase supply.
And let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, when the last time we built a water project, we were a state of 17 million people. We've doubled our population. We have to build new water infrastructure and capture more water.
And let's talk about projects. We know that the voters passed a bond in November of 2014. In this recent budget, I understand another $2 billion was passed towards water projects. But are we building water projects?
We're not.
We're not.
You know, we took a great step last year that you and I talked about in passing the water bond with overwhelming support from the voters.
Right, and bipartisan support.
Bipartisan support. It was a great step in the right direction to have the beginning of a financing mechanism to fund projects to increase water supply. What we have to do now is make sure that those projects are ready to be constructed when the financing becomes available next year.
Okay.
And if we look at history, you know, in 2006, a bond passed to be able to improve our flood protection systems. None of that money has been spent because projects are caught up in bureaucracy. And shame on us if we make the same mistake with water storage projects, desalination projects,
Right.
by tying them up in endless years of bureaucracy instead of funding them and getting them off the ground.
And let's talk about part of that bureaucracy, which often winds up in court. We know that California is very protective of its beautiful coasts and beautiful green forests. Brown now, but green in the past. And there's something called Sequa, California
Right.
Environmental Quality Act. In the past, Sequa has been used, some would argue, as a weapon to thwart projects. This governor and prior governors have signed legislation allowing for Sequa, is the word exemptions or carve-outs?
It depends on the path.
Okay.
This time it's streamlining. But you're
Okay.
right. In its original form, it was a tool to protect our beautiful coastline, to have quality air, quality water. It has become a weapon against economic growth opportunities.
Right.
And so what we've been seeking to do is say to our environmental regulations, there should be finality, there should be certainty. They should never stop projects that would increase water supply, that would lead to economic growth and prosperity for our state. And what it's become is a weapon that just never ends in litigation for often purposes that have nothing to do with environmental protection.
So the Kings got a Sequa exemption.
Yes.
LA football got a Sequa exemption.
The Warriors Arena got an exemption.
Okay, and what about for a reservoir?
They've said no every time. And I've supported all of the efforts to streamline. They haven't been exemptions outright, but to
understand.
streamline the process for the Kings, for the Warriors, for football stadiums. We want to be able to have those downtown areas thrive. But if it's good enough for a professional sports team, it should be darn good enough to increase water supply that all Californians rely on.
So your friends on the Democratic side have been preventing these proposals from moving forward. What about your friend in the governor's mansion? Because apparently he is a friend.
Yeah, we've engaged Governor Brown on this subject a lot. Governor Brown has indicated that he's in favor of reforming the Environmental Quality
He said it was
Act.
the Lord's work.
He did.
He said,
He's
"This is
been
a
very
Jesuit."
upfront about
Right.
that. But thus far, he has not been willing to partner with us to actually move it through the legislative process. We're still calling on him to do that. There are a number of ways we could do that, but we have got to wake up and move these projects forward for the health of our state and of families.
Another project the governor is very committed to looking at is transportation. As you know, we are in special session for transportation projects. We have tens of billions of dollars of costs. What do you make of this special session?
It's definitely important. I mean, our ability to move goods and services across a strong, reliable transportation network is so critical to our present and future economy. The question is, how do we get there? There's a huge unmet need when it comes to just fixing the roads and the highways and the bridges we already have, much less improving our trade corridors through new construction. So I'm looking forward to working with the governor, Republicans and Democrats alike, to see what we can do about it. But the first step is to make sure that the money taxpayers are already giving to Sacramento for roads is used for that purpose.
And as I understand
California
it,
doesn't
right.
have a very good track record on that.
Right. As I understand it, as we speak, some of the money that's paid towards gas taxes, toward weight,
Yes, weight fees, truck weight fees.
are being diverted
That's
into
right.
other programs. Is it time to start looking at the gas tax itself? Has not gone up in 20 years. We have more efficient vehicles now.
We have to look at everything. There's no
Okay.
question that the gas tax is a dwindling resource
Right.
for a number of reasons. But again, the first step is to make sure that the money stops being diverted to all sorts of programs that have nothing to do with transportation, and that we build public confidence that we're going to treat taxpayer money wisely and use them for transportation purposes. But we do have to look at, does it make sense to eliminate the gas tax and move to a more reliable, stable source of funding? All of these things will be conversations that we'll have during special session.
But when you look at taxes, it does require a 2/3 vote. Are you willing, or is your caucus willing to go up on a tax increase?
Right now, we think there is money if we make transportation funding a true priority. We just passed a budget last week that's $115 billion. $15 billion higher than just 3 years ago.
You'll come back?
We got to fund transportation.
Her name is Kristin Olsen. I'm Brad Pomerantz. It's Local Edition.